Well, it happened again, and the way the games industry is set in its tracks already and doesn't want to change even a bit, it's gonna happen even more. Another indie game has come out of literally nowhere and completely swept its competition and showed AAA studios how it's done. And what do AAA multi-billion-dollar companies are doing in response to this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Blizzard is apologizing, in fact, for releasing a patch so buggy and unfinished it looks like an Ubisoft game. It's not looking good for a lot of the old players in the industry.
There is nothing that I love more than watching a 60-person indie team absolutely body a company that burned 10 years, 400 developers, and $500 million trying to achieve the exact same thing. Quadruple A gaming, Ubisoft? One of the most interesting...
Skull and Bones is a legendary thing. I mean, honestly, Skull and Bones came out way before its time to shine, because at that point we did not have a concept of Concord. And my god, if there is one game that deserves to be retroactively added to the Concord timeline, it is Skull and Bones. It's a pirate game where the coolest loot you can get is wood planks and maybe a gear or something. Cannonballs, yes. A pirate game with that exciting loot.
Things that I think that I've seen over the past couple of years is how often the games industry will just let opportunity pass them by. Some of the most obvious opportunities pass them by. I'm talking about free money, free engagement, free players, gamers that are telling these guys exactly what they want in full detail, but blinded by their arrogance, the industry just walks in the opposite direction. Windrose has been absolutely dominating. The players keep going up, the sales keep going up, people are loving it, and I view this as like one of the most obvious successes, one of the most just handed on a silver platter successes that we have seen in years, but a lot of people are caught surprised by it. What? How could this have happened? How could the thing that players have been...
The easiest thing in the world to just make an interesting, fun pirate game. And they did it. And no one else thought it's possible.
asking for been the thing that they wanted. Who would have guessed? You have games journalists that are out there that are talking about it, how it's a surprise indie hit, saying that this game just essentially came out of nowhere. You got a games industry that would have never looked in the direction of a game like this. And I'm sitting here wondering how anybody could have thought that this was anything but inevitable at this point. This game sold 500,000 copies in its first 2 days.
That's a lot.
What a surprise. No. Players were asking for it. You weren't listening. So today, I want to talk about why the games industry was caught by surprise when it comes to Windrose.
They're always caught by surprise because they never listen. People literally gave a step-by-step explanation what needs to be fixed in Starfield to make it a playable game. What did Bethesda do? Ignore it. Yes. And many such cases, in fact. Blizzard has done the same. Diablo 4, people told them what to do to make a good game. I told them multiple times. They just ignored us. They kept going in the way of the oblivion. And many such cases, and these cases continue because these people are incapable of accepting the fact that maybe they don't know everything about the world and how it operates and how it works and what's good. And they can't accept this. Because they're arrogant.
To talk about, well, why the players actually saw this game from a mile away and how I think games like this are exactly how this industry gets replaced. But before that, a word from today's sponsor, Display. The reason why it gets under my skin so much is because I just cannot stand watching somebody leave the front door wide open and just watching their customers just walk right out, especially in the games industry where they have to be the most easiest audience to be able to sell to. These guys will tell you everything that they want. Well, yes, I know that not every single customer is going to say the exact same thing. I get that.
Combat looks already better than Fable by 10 times.
But when you have enough of these guys that are saying the same thing, when they're asking for the same thing, and they're also spending their money the same way, I think it becomes pretty obvious where the problem is. And man, indie games, they are more than happy to take those complaints off your hands. Actually, the producer of Windrose laid this contrast out earlier this month in an interview with Automaton, where they were asked how the game had started as a free-to-play MMO and then later shifted to a buy-to-play survival game, and what had motivated that change. The producer, Phil, had said that the game was always going to be survival-focused, but they weren't sure that they would be able to handle the costs or the ambition with live service. And more importantly, he then went and said the one thing that I think the games industry...
By the way, indie companies making MMOs or always online live service type of titles pretty much always has ended in disaster.
Is apparently allergic to hearing, which is the players wanted something else. Quoting him directly, he said, "More importantly, it seems that the majority of players who were attracted to the game initially preferred to have it this way too, a buy-to-play PvE adventure. We are very happy that the players' requests and our own vision overlapped here." That is a massive choice for any project to make, and it mirrors Crimson Desert.
At this point, the sentiment has shifted from what it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, where people wanted things for free because we didn't have money. Now, granted, I don't know about you, but I still don't have money, but some people do. And a lot of people, because of that, now want to pay for a game, get the full experience, no cutoffs, no nothing, and enjoy it to the fullest. This is what most people honestly kind of looking forward in gaming nowadays.
Almost perfectly in this case, because both of these games were initially aiming at that live service MMO territory, but then both of them pivoted away from that, and both of them ended up doing the one thing that the games industry keeps pretending is the most terrifying gamble ever, listening to players and selling them a premium game that they actually wanted, and in both cases, that decision paid off. Windrose launched into early access on April 14th. It sold 500,000 copies in its first 2 days, and then it just kept climbing. The player counts kept going up, the sales kept going up. The game pushed past 220,000 concurrent players on Steam, hit 1 million copies sold in under a week, and now it looks like it's on pace to be able to crush those numbers by the time that this game reaches its full release in the next year or so, because, man, what a game they made. You guys already know how much I enjoy early access games. There is something, I don't really know exactly what it is. It's just something that's really charming about playing these games in their earliest state. When it's a little unbalanced, maybe a little bit wonky, probably a lot of wonky in some cases, and you're getting to throw feedback into the mix before everything is locked in. That's supposed to be the whole point of early access. It's a period where these developers should be the most open to feedback because, well, it's when the game is still taking its shape. But I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. Windrose has to be one of the most polished early access games that I have played outside of the usual monsters like Slay the Spire or Hades.
It honestly kind of looks and feels a little bit like New World, doesn't it?
This game has pretty much everything that you would want out of a survival game, and it just goes even further with that with its pirate fantasy. The base building is so intuitive and flexible. It kind of reminds me of Enshrouded in a lot of ways, though it's not nearly as involved in that. The exploration is packed with a ton of stuff for you to be able to find. You have hidden objectives, bosses, encounters, dungeons, caves, hidden chests, and world events, all kinds of different things to do. It has actual build diversity. You can find different weapons and weapon effects and rare weapons and gear sets and a bunch of different ways to upgrade, craft, buy, and build out your character. There are reputation systems with pirates and smugglers.
Do you think that honestly this is maybe the next Ark Survival?
Factions, bounties, main quests, side quests, and on top of all of that, this game has some of the best naval combat that I think that we have seen since Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
I'm turned adrift to star upon my native shore. Should hostile fleets adventure upon the raging main, true hearts of oak, we British tars will push the sea again.
I think the best way that I can describe why so many people have connected with this game on such a broad scale is because Windrose, it kind of feels like a game that was made by people who have been dressing up like Jack Sparrow every single Halloween for the past 10 years. This is not a game with a pirate skin stretched over it. This is a game made by people who were fully bought into the fantasy. It feels like it was made by people who just really love pirate shit, really love video games, and then just managed to smash those two things together in just the right way. Whether
Honestly, this just looks like something that was made by people who are willing to actually make something fun, not think 5 steps ahead into some arbitrary thing that no one can even understand. It's that easy.
It's the art style, whether it's sailing across the water, whether it's the sound design, the playlist of absurdly good sea shanties that are on the ship that I could just never turn off, or the Souls adjacent combat that they put in where even a level 1 board can just send you into the Shadow Realm. This game just keeps delivering because none of it feels fake. None of it feels like it's some type of hollow marketing angle. All of this feels genuine. I feel that, the players feel that, and that's exactly why this game has been doing so well. A lot of people were asking for a game like this. These developers showed up and they answered that call, and the players showed up for it immediately. The rest of the industry somehow didn't see this coming. Maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just living in my own little bubble and the algorithm just isn't feeding me what it's supposed to, but I thought it was really strange how games media was kind of silent when this game dropped. There was some demo coverage, some light demo coverage at the very beginning, mostly from smaller outlets, but once the full game hit and it started exploding, the response to this felt weirdly muted for whatever reason. And that only really stood out to me as the days went on because this game was selling like
Nothing weird about it. Legacy media, your IGNs, your games radars, your PC gamers, and all of those places that no one wants to visit anymore because they don't provide you any value for the time spent reading their articles. Unless you're trying to make fun of them, which is pretty much the only honest reason you would ever want to read them at this point. They can't openly admit, oh, look at that, another indie game is just sweeping away the competition. They can't. They still need that access from your Ubisofts, BioWares, this and that, Blizzards. They still need it. They still crave it because when when the next titles from these companies drop, they're gonna be big, and well, everyone's gonna be interested in it for one reason or another, good or negative. They're gonna need it, and if they don't play ball, and there's a reason it's called Access Media, they're not gonna get invited to the party, and they fear it. So they can't just say, oh, this indie game is really good. They need to wait until it drops, becomes popular, and then make an article like they always thought it actually was good, even though they never did.
crazy. It was pulling huge player numbers. It was sitting in the top 5 most played games on Steam for almost an entire week, and the coverage still barely matched what was happening, outside of Kotaku calling the game a surprised hit, which from my perspective, it's only a surprise if you're not paying attention, but most of these bigger outlets really didn't move on this until after the game had already crossed 1 million copies sold. Once it did, well, then it became impossible to ignore, and we started seeing the PC Gamer articles and the IGN write-ups and the reviews in progress, all this stuff coming after the audience had already made this story obvious to them. And I think that says a lot about how out of step games media has become with the people that are actually buying and playing these games. And honestly, I really didn't take much notice of this, and the disconnect really didn't hit me too hard until I had started looking at the game's trailers, and I saw that IGN's upload was sitting at 245,000 views, which I felt was really low for a game this big. But then I started scrolling down a little bit further.
Actually, I think that's a lot, to be honest, considering it's an indie title, technically.
And I saw that Asmongold's reaction was sitting near 1 million views. And this is a lot more than just big streamer is getting views. It's a lot worse than that. This is an issue, at least, I mean, it's not that much of an issue for us. It's definitely an issue for them. But the issue is what one guy in a room reacting to a trailer is feeling a lot more relevant and a lot more worth listening to than an entire media machine that is supposed to be built around covering these games. This is what it looks like when the conversation no longer involves the press. This is what it looks like when these guys are on the outside now. The other thing that I took notice of, too, is that nearly all the coverage over the past week has gone to Pragmata, which, to be fair, it is an incredible...
Yep. I mean, to be fair, obviously a lot of people are going to talk about Pragmata. It is one of the greatest and biggest self-reports we have had in the last couple of decades, honestly.
Game. I absolutely love it, but Windrose sold the same amount, at least so we know so far. It's just as popular, maybe even more popular in some cases, and still it felt like this game had to claw its way into the conversation, and I think part of that is just coming down to the fact that Windrose is not really giving these guys the kind of angle that they like to run with. They can't squeeze out headlines about how Pragmata's Twitchy mode is a dog whistle, or write another piece about how they're tired of, quote, seeing men protecting little...
Ugh, disgusting. This is why game journalism has fallen out of favor this much. This is why journalism in general has fallen out of favor, because for some reason these people have completely the opposite values to us, and they think left is right and right is left, and It seems like there is no way to fix this, even though these people have been shown millions of times to be wrong, to the level where even they themselves can't really deny it. They still keep going. They still keep going. And it doesn't look like they're gonna stop. So there's no lesson they can learn. There is nothing that can happen to them except them pretty much just getting fired or becoming so irrelevant no one watches them and they have to shut down their business.
Girls to prove their masculinity. So instead of getting in front of Windrose, instead of recognizing it for what it was when it was happening, they waited. The players are the ones that forced these guys to respond. They didn't support it, they reacted to it. And the more obvious these successes start looking to players, the more they find them first, the worse this industry looks for not seeing them, especially when so much of that feels intentional. Now, while I'm sure some of this has likely something to do with the fact that these guys are not getting review copies of these games or early access games, you're really not going to get that. But it does go to prove that the less access they get, the less likely you are to be able to get any coverage. And, in the background over the years, I've been talking to a lot of people that are in games media just because of everything that's been happening in the games industry. And a lot of these guys will tell me straight up that the reason things look like this is because, well, a lot of this stuff is in the editor's hands. And even if they bring them stories, breaking news that they find, games that are breaking out or whatever it might be, they just won't run it because the priority is AAA before anything else unless something comes along and forces them to pivot. Basically, it has to be something that's making a big enough splash for these guys to be able to take notice of it. And none of it's organic. None of it's based on instinct. None of it has anything to do with what players are talking about or what players are interested in. And in a lot of cases, these guys are just ignoring it. That is not a good way to do business. That is definitely not a good way to do journalism. I'll tell you that right now. But, I also think the other problem that these guys are running into, especially when it comes to just general relevance at this point, is that with how indie games have been taking over the games industry, games media is just not built to be able to follow them. They don't get the early access. They don't get a lot of access to begin with. They're basically on even footing as the players, and because they're not listening.
Oh, they could. They probably could. But the thing is, they will literally never try. And because they literally never try, you know what happens? A lot of these games that are up and coming actually give review codes and, keys to people actually like me. I have gotten a ton of keys from all kinds of different games who are saying, hey, check this out, buddy. It's free. And, it's as simple as just claiming a key. And maybe someone makes a video about this. This is what they want.
Listening to the audience, they're always a mile behind us. I didn't really take notice of all of this until over the last week. I was like, man, Pragmata is all over the news. And a lot of this stuff is culture war clickbait more than anything else. So I reached out to a couple of writers, and these guys just told me straight up, oh, yeah, we're trying to squeeze water from a stone right now. None of it's real. It's like, what is the point? This also makes me...
Point is probably AdSense in this situation. I mean, IGN is a company at the end of the day, failing and bad company, but a company nonetheless, and companies do need to make money somehow.
We think that this is not just a media issue, this is an industry-wide issue. You're seeing a insane disconnect between the audience and the industries at large. Because I think a game like this goes to prove that the people that are writing about games, selling games, and funding games have absolutely no clue what players are interested in or what they're actually playing. And when you have an industry...
I think the thing that proved this for a lot of people who were previously maybe not fully convinced that is the case, I think that got proven to an extreme degree with Crimson Desert. IGN 6 out of 10 Crimson Desert. IGN now has given Mouse PI a 6, by the way, out of 10. They gave Diablo Vessel of Hatred a 8 out of 10, even though it's still garbage. And, well, they gave Dragon Age Veilguard a 9 out of 10. Everyone remembers that. That's like that is currently the most iconic IGN thing, that they gave Veilguard a 9 out of 10. And everything that's actually good gets, a 6 out of 10. And the reason why they gave Crimson Desert a 6 out of 10 was not enough paint. I didn't know where I was going. I wasn't sure if I'm solving this puzzle correctly. I'm too stupid to solve this puzzle in the first place. The game's too hard. Make it easier. That was it. I mean, when this is the reason why you dislike Crimson Desert, it's not the game's fault, it's a you fault.
That is that disconnected, eventually you're going to start leaving gaps, big gaps, like, I don't know, 200,000 views on a trailer versus a million views on a trailer. Or, in the case of the games industry, well, an entire market that's up for grabs. Now, I don't think of Windrose as just another hit game. I view this as one of the clearest examples that we've seen in years of an industry that's just been completely left wide open for anybody else to take. I mean, I think the demand for a game like this is more than obvious. Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which for a lot of people, they view it as the peak of the franchise, that came out back in 2013. And by 2026, Ubisoft had said that game had reached 34 million players. Now, in this case,
Jesus, that's actually a lot.
I'm actually going to give Ubisoft a little bit of credit here and say that number is probably not all that far off from the actual copies they moved because, well, the game did sell 11 million copies in its first year. Notice how they still used copies sold back then. Sea of Thieves announced 40 million players across all platforms back in 2024. I mean, pirate games have always kind of been a big thing for a lot of people. Survival games have been huge.
Yeah, pirate games are very distinct from the stuff that you honestly typically play. And the gameplay loop there is very fun and very diverse, but in the good way.
For years. It's been one of the most popular genres in gaming, so a survival pirate game kind of feels like it's one of the most obvious combinations possible right now, which raises the question, why the hell is an indie studio the one that's leading the charge instead of the AAA companies that were in a perfect position to be able to do so? Well, as you probably guessed it, it's because those companies have spent years trying to tell their players what they want, or they're using data analysts to try to predict what they think that they want instead of actually just paying attention to what the audience is actually asking.
The data analysts have at this point been pretty much wrong about almost exclusively everything that they have tried to predict in the games industry because they look at these things only as just numbers. And they don't understand it. In this case, you can't look at it as numbers. There's player sentiment, quality, and so many more things. These people legitimately think that there's just like, okay, pirate, looter, arena, base building, yes, that's the thing. That's what people want. And it's just a bunch of stupid tags that actually don't make a lot of sense. That's how they analyze these things, and they don't even understand it. That's not how you can analyze the games industry.
For Ubisoft is the perfect example. In my eyes, they were the king of pirate games with Black Flag. They set the standard in a lot of cases, and they clearly saw interest when they made that game. But instead of giving players more of what they actually wanted or building on that foundation in a meaningful way, these idiots tried to force a square peg through a round hole with Skull and Bones, the first quadruple A live service game, one of the most...
And the first pirate game that has more than 50% of your crew be women. That's right, at its finest.
Aggressively monetized games in recent memory, and well, it was a pirate game that locks players into naval combat only and still somehow manages to screw that up. The naval combat in Black Flag is so much better than Skull and Bones that it genuinely doesn't even make any sense that this actually came from the same publisher. Now, to Ubisoft's credit, and I can't believe I'm saying that twice in one video, they do seem to be seeing the light a little bit.
I can't have him cover this because I'm gonna do a separate video on that later on today. Anyway, that was Legendary Drops 10 out of 10. Bye.